is the motor age. 23 million motor cars on the boulevards and highways of America. All of them going someplace in a hurry. All of them tuned to the fast tempo of American life. And to keep this torrent of traffic flowing steadily and smoothly calls for a standing army far greater than that of national defense. An army trained and equipped to speed you on your way in safety. Nobody calls them heroes, but they saved thousands of lives just the same, carrying on in a thankless, often misunderstood service. Of course, there are still motoring accidents, all too many of them. In fact, last year, accidents cost American motorists more than $2 billion. Here's one. Fortunately, it wasn't business. It's everybody's business. Accidents don't happen. Behind everyone, there is a very definite reason. And by following two simple common sense rules of the road, these costly, often tragic mishaps can be avoided. First, keep your car fit to drive. Second, drive with courtesy. Let's reenact the accident which has just occurred and find the reason. There he goes, obeying the speed laws, driving at a conservative pace. He thinks his brakes are all right, and perhaps they are for ordinary usage. Of course, he isn't expecting an emergency, but here is an emergency. He stamps on the brakes. A serious accident that could have been prevented if his car had been fit to drive. Faulty braking is the true public enemy number one of safe motoring. Few motorists realize the tremendous momentum of a motor car in motion. For instance, at 60 miles an hour, the average car actually has greater impact power than a 6-inch projectile. Or to put it another way, at a mile-a-minute speed, your car has the momentum equal to driving off a 10-story building. Trick photography, of course, but it's no exaggeration of the job your brakes have to perform to stop your car at 60 miles an hour. How are the brakes on your own car? Could you stop as quickly and as smoothly as this Plymouth? Notice that although the driver had both hands off the steering wheel, there was no skidding. According to police safety standards, at 20 miles an hour, your car should be able to stop within 36 feet. The new Plymouth stops in half that distance. Put your own car to that test. See how well it measures up with modern safety standards. For safe, certain stopping, brakes must work equally and evenly. This testing machine plays no favorites. In a minute, it tells you whether your brakes are trustworthy. Don't take a chance. Be sure your brakes are right. And when you buy a new car, be sure it has self-equalizing hydraulic brakes. Out on the boulevard and the open road, little acts of carelessness frequently are responsible for major consequences. Hey! That was close. And it might have been closer. Just suppose our Plymouth hadn't had the world's safest brakes. Here's what might have happened. Of course, the driver of the leading car should have signaled. On the other hand, the other driver disregarded one of the primary rules of safe motoring. He was following closer than his assured stopping distance. And speaking of hand signals, here's a set which are clearly understandable to any motorist. This clearly indicates a left turn. Here is a signal for a right turn. Attention following traffic. She's going to stop. Now let's leave the boulevard for a moment for a little lesson in courtesy. On foot, this chap is the very soul of courtesy and chivalry. He has all the marks of breeding which distinguish a gentleman from a hoodlum. But when he gets behind the wheel of an automobile, he suddenly becomes a 100-horsepower bully. The man who would never consider blocking a theater aisle thinks nothing of loafing along at a snail's pace out in the lane of fast traffic. A nuisance, of course, but more important, a genuine menace to safety. Anyone who wants to pass does so at his own risk and everyone else's risk. In this enlightened day and age, can you imagine two gentlemen battling tooth and nail to decide which will be the first into an elevator? But how often have you observed drivers crumple fenders, or worse, in some utterly childish attempt to beat out a fellow motorist? On the football field, this probably would be classified as high-grade broken field running. But on the boulevard, it is the quick route to trouble. Follow the cut-in driver home, and 9 cases out of 10, you'll find he's hurrying to nothing more important than last week's funny paper. And that at the risk of his fenders and perhaps his neck. Aha! Our snake driver is thrown for a loss by the traffic squad. And let's hope they keep him on the sidelines for the rest of the season. Traffic lights are intended for traffic control. But there's always someone who tries to beat the light. At best, it gives him only a few feet advantage and a head start. And sometimes... Was it worth it? Of course not. But it cost American motorists thousands of fenders and more last year to prove it for themselves. You can win only a few seconds, and you can lose a couple of months in some hospital. Anyone is a sucker to gamble against such odds. How much do you actually save by taking chances? Amazingly little. In a recent test conducted by police in a metropolitan city, 2 new Plymouth cars staged the most unusual race across town. Both were driven by expert drivers. But what a difference in the driving. One car was driven at a pace bordering on recklessness. If the run had not been under police supervision, it is quite probable the driver would have landed in jail. In fact, had he not been an expert driver, he might have landed in the emergency ward. The other car, driven over the same route, held a conservative pace. Its driver didn't loaf, but he obeyed every law of the road and of motoring courtesy. Yet, when the 12-mile run was completed, it was found that the driver who had cheated the traffic code had won by a margin of only 3 minutes. Think of it, 15 seconds saved per mile. And think also how dearly he might have paid for those seconds. Motoring must be made safer. The police of the nation are doing their part, smoothing the flow of traffic, weeding out the unfit and the reckless drivers who would turn the boulevard into a speedway. The motor car manufacturers are doing their part with the safest motor cars in all motoring history. And Plymouth is setting the pace in safety construction. Plymouth hydraulic brakes are self-equalizing, therefore positive and safe. Plymouth performance is sure-footed. A new sway eliminator prevents dangerous side sway. And for lasting protection, Plymouth provides an all-steel body of remarkable strength. Steel reinforced with steel, welded forever into a mighty bulwark of unyielding safety. The 1935 Plymouth is unquestionably the finest low-priced car ever built, more spirited in performance, more thrilling to drive, and more comfortable to ride in. Above all, it is the safest low-priced car in motor car history. But the rest is up to you. After all, the safest motor car can be no safer than the driver at the wheel. The best rule of the road is, don't gamble. Play safe. Drive a Plymouth, and drive it with consideration.